Yeah, thanks, Alex, for joining us. Just real quick, for your credentials, you write for 810 and what's the College Dogs? Is that correct? There you go.
collegefootballdogs.com. So, and
Nice.
no,
Well,
we are not a Georgia football website, as many of the people like to call us.
yeah, they seem to be having a hard time staying on the road sober at this point right now.
Ain't that the truth? They just lost their best receiver, Raw Thomas, so maybe that'll get him in check. We'll see. But
The way college football is going right now with NIL deals, not that that's necessarily a bad thing, at least in the initial conceptual idea, but the way that it's turning out so far, I think, is leading to a lot of these issues. Young men with a lot of money who haven't had it before, with obviously the small towns where most of the colleges are located. And those college programs have a lot of influence with local law enforcement and anything else that goes on there, especially with the boosters. So you're basically giving it, 18, 19, 20 year olds just a lot of power without ever having that experience before.
exactly, yeah. If there was like some sort of class that could be taught, I know that there's a couple of institutions that are doing that, but Georgia is clearly not one of them. They may want to invest in that. But yeah, I mean, NIL is really changing the game, and just overall, it's been an interesting ride these past couple of years. I mean, with NIL, and then obviously with conference realignment too, and just overall, I think you're gonna see a completely different college football when all is said and done. So, I mean,
I
I
don't think some of the problems that at least Ty Bob was talking about, young guys getting a bunch of money that hasn't had it before. I don't think those were unforeseen problems. I think anybody with a little bit of common sense can kind of point out something. These guys are going to get a little wild.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, and
definitely.
now, Alex, I think you would probably know a little bit more about this. I saw something come across in a phone update earlier, maybe a week or two ago. There was a court that agreed that colleges should now be paying players. Is that correct? What is that specific to a certain state, or is that now all college football? What's going on there?
So it is all of college football. It goes back to the House versus NCAA. Currently, there's an ongoing lawsuit between the House of Representatives and the NCAA in determining the employment status of student athletes. And basically, what this ruling came about, because it's still ongoing, we could see again, like athletes unionize and athletes, have essentially the same stipulations as your average American employee. Um, and what just got agreed upon between the NCAA and the House was that colleges are allowed to play, colleges are allowed to pay players um, based off of their TV revenue and what kind of revenue they bring in. They're allowed to pool that together, and it essentially just trickles down to the players on top of the NIL money. So it's kind of a pool for each college and each conference that trickles down to the student athletes eventually. So
Now, obviously, we're specifically talking about college football, but this specific law that would be enacted if it does pass through would actually be for all athletes, so not just college football. And we're looking at, again, college football being the main provider for probably every school. There's a few schools out there that may not. Those would be on the lower tier, D1 AA, D2s. D3 obviously doesn't do scholarships for athletics. So this would have to go for everyone. Would it be required that all athletes are now paid the same? And then that also is dependent upon the universities that you go to as well, because
right.
Texas University or the University of Texas, their football program pulls in over $100 million every year, and that
Right.
was at least yeah, at least $100 million every year. But then you look at like East Carolina, and they probably pull in like 20 at most, I would assume. So what does that mean for the colleges themselves?
So it's right now it's in the very early stages of development, so there's not like a whole lot of information regarding it. But from how I understand it, it's going to be a sort of like profit sharing system based on what conference you're in, which is why we're seeing these conference realignments to the
Mm.
SEC, to the Big Ten, because those two conferences obviously earn the lion's share of the profits. Um, when it comes to the bigger schools, they're going to get a bigger share of the profits. So essentially, not everybody is going to get paid the same, but all players are going to get paid in some capacity. It is, again, in the very early stages of development. Nothing's like really set in stone as of yet. But that is kind of what they're mulling over right now as to how that's going to work and how that profit sharing is going to look like right now. So that's essentially what is coming down. Obviously, that court ruling just came about. So in other words, we could see further changes, but right now it's in the very early stages. So
That
if that
trickled.
makes sense.
Go ahead, Tevin.
Baseline or just like face value from what you guys have said, it almost sounds like sports as a whole is going to benefit a little bit from it, as far as like the smaller guys are going to get something, but it sounds like the rich are going to get richer and the smaller schools are going to kind of keep
Very true.
spinning their wheels.
I think
Yeah,
there's going to be
that's
major impacts when it comes to like tuition
mhm.
potentially. But yeah, that you're 100% on, Tybo. Alex, does that also trickle down, or like obviously you've got Power Five, and that's where everybody's going to be most focused on. But does that trickle down to like Division 1 AA, like your Western Illinois and North Dakota State University? And then what about Division 2 or even NAIA? But I
Yeah.
guess one of my biggest questions would, what does that mean for Division 3 football, which nobody
Yeah.
talks about, but is only on the academic scholarship level as well.
There's a lot of talk about that right now, and there's a lot of cause for concern when it comes to D2 and D3 football, and walk-ons for that matter, that don't earn these scholarships, that, may not earn those NIL deals, that may not earn, as big of a share, because it goes by by player basis too, if I read correctly. Um, you know, Obviously you've got players that are probably going to bring in more money because they have the higher NIL deals, they have the better scholarships and everything of that sort. But there is that concern there of they're going to be eliminating the walk on, they're going to be eliminating, D2, D3 football, in terms of, I guess, relevance. Because I mean, in some cases, obviously D2, D3 playoffs are shown on TV, but it's not very often that, they're garnering that TV revenue at that level. So there are, again, there's a lot of kinks to be worked out to this point. Um, there's a lot of concerns that I know are being discussed right now between conference commissioners and league commissioners with the NCAA regarding, okay, how are we going to go about doing this to where everybody gets a slice of the pie and everybody survives? And that's a very daunting task because there's hundreds and thousands of schools across the United States, so, and athletic programs at that. So
That changes the whole landscape. That's very interesting, and not even close to where I thought we were going to take the show here in the beginning at all. But that popped into my head, and I couldn't. I'm glad you can have enough information to be able to speak on that, because that law it changes the direction of the entire landscape of college athletics, not just college football, but college athletics and college institutions as a whole. Whenever that goes into action, because I am almost for certain that it's going to get passed in some way, shape, or form, because they
absolutely.
want to side with the courts are wanting to side with the students at this
Mhm.
point in time now.
and the media people too. The Fox, ESPN is really pushing this law to go through because they know that it means more TV revenue. It means them getting better TV deals for schools because more schools are going to want to up their TV deals and up their revenue. So it's going to be an arms race now more than ever. So that old adage of college football is an arms race and college athletics in general is an arms race, it's
Only gonna get
true
worse. It's gonna
truer than
magnify
ever.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know when like end of my high school years, early college years, when I was like, I don't know, I guess a little bit more focused on the college level collegiate athletics. I I read a lot of stuff that like little league and high school athletics, like the athlete pool was getting smaller, opportunities for young athletes were getting smaller, and I know big NFL, NBA, like they like players want to do as much as they can to help grow the game, as they would say, but like we're really kind of losing that battle, and I feel like this we're starting to lose like that back end of college athletics if you
Mhm.
look at what we're talking about here. Like the loss of opportunity is just starting to rise up through
Yep.
like sports. So
Exactly. Yeah,
it's
I
it's
mean,
it's it's a it's a shitty way to look at it, but like I mean, it's I don't know if
it's
we're not gonna fight this. Like it's
absolutely not.
I
it's
would
in the works.
I would wonder if this doesn't actually help grow any of the athletic games that are going on, because now you're not only having the professionals, those who are at the top of the top of the top and making millions of dollars. Now you've got college players that are able to take deals being paid by their colleges, so on and so forth. That allows them to, a lot of guys who go to the pros give back to their communities. Well, now you've got a lot of people making at least a little bit of money while they're in college. How much more does that mean that they're going to go back and help their communities before they even make it to a professional level, if they even ever make it to a professional level? I would wonder if this can actually help grow those Pop Warner Little League teams and communities, because we know that those people will most likely go and take care of wherever they came from, in some sort of capacity.
Right.
I, I,
Definitely in
I
a perfect world, for
yeah,
sure. I
Yeah,
and
mean,
like
true.
that's yeah.
yeah.
That's
And
seeing the
I was
best in
coming
people
at
that's
it.
usually not there.
I was kind of coming at it from the angle of like if I just go back to Kansas City and look at my old youth football league. There were only 8 teams in there when I was playing, and they're hanging on with like 4 to 6 right now. Like there's that athlete pool is going to be concentrated at the moneymaker schools, and I'm like the programs at the smaller schools are going to start to dissipate and go
Gotcha.
away. Is what
Yeah.
I'm like
Exactly.
less
Yeah.
opportunities spread out across like it's going to be like the athletes are going to get found, but like you're going to concentrate it at the place where it's already concentrated at. So I'm
Yeah.
that's I
I
like
mean,
I would love for that to happen, and I love the sentiment, Ty Bob, but I just feel like we're what we've talked about. I think we're talking about losing.
I
Uh,
mean, it goes
yeah,
back to those concerns of losing the walk on,
yeah,
that, so all those walk on success stories, Baker Mayfield to shout out Oklahoma,
Oh,
there's going to be less of those guys. There's going to be guys that uh, the importance of those high school camps is going to be so important. The importance of exposure of high school athletes. There are some states out there that are encouraging NIL deals for high school athletes, like Florida, and I believe Texas. It's in the house right now, so it's going to be interesting to see where that goes and what kind of business it becomes, because it's sounding like they're wanting to start it as early as youth football. So it's crazy, but at the
mm,
same time, Dabo's exactly right. That's going to shrink the talent pool because there's going to be people that are going to be more stingy with their money
yep.
and wanting to put it towards the best athletes.